The last time I was here, I introduced this here, paradigm. Paradigm is, how can I put it in a really quick way? We'll talk more about it this afternoon. You're going to feel it in a moment. It's let's just say it's a sonic instrument. The top, the little pyramid here, is actually a much smaller dimensional replica of the Great Pyramid at Giza. A lot of people don't realize that pretty much almost virtually all of the pyramids that have been found in Egypt had pyramidions or capstones on them, which were all stolen. A lot of people don't realize that there's been talk of pyramids in China that, of course, they won't acknowledge any of them. One particular pyramid that was recently found that actually had a crystal capstone on it that the Chinese government's trying to about. Where else? Bolivia, Central America, South America, all over. This instrument, what it does is it's kind of like having look at that, perfect timing, 3 independent, completely tunable analog singing bowls. So imagine you have a singing bowl and it's whatever the pitch is, and then you want to kind of bend it a little higher, bend it a little lower. The root of the root tone of what paradigm does is it moves through the 7 terraces, that beautiful meditation of Paul's, which was absolutely amazing today. It's always amazing, but today I was gone. The root sound moves through what was mistranslated in the Aramaic as seven demons. This is what the word demon means in Aramaic. The word is shiadain. Okay? That's a demon. Okay, so what it was supposed to say in the Bible is hitting on something metal while holding it with your thumb. That's the word demon. No, that's not what I mean. Demon means an energy, a force, a tone, a vibration, a frequency that's not sounding. Somehow it's being muffled, it's being muted. The word apek, translated as cast out, shabeya, 7, shiadain, unvoicing forces, frequencies, etc., and apek, the casting out. What cast out means is to stimulate the movement of something. This is what it meant to cast out 7 demons, or cast out 1 demon. Meant to allow it to voice freely. And of course there happens to be 7. What a coinky-dink. And in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, she actually named them, and she called those darkness, desire, ignorance, the exhilaration of death, what beats out of your chest as you face death, the foolish words of the realm, the foolish visions of the flesh, and hostility and wrath, which is the quality of each of the 7 chakras when they're not open and voicing freely. Shh. Imagine me saying that in a standard Christian church. I would already be outside, I think. But I've got this right now. This is blue. What you're seeing here on the capstone, that blue color, this is on what's called the Ajna chakra. It's the 3rd eye. I've got the little eye of Ra here, which I'm sure you can't see. That's just I want you to take a big breath right now. Hold that in just a few moments in the temple, and then... Now let me say something before we proceed. The last time I was here, I remember that the volume on this was almost deafening. And it's only happened here at the fellowship, I've got to say this. I've been in small rooms where I really had to crank it. Most places, I have to have it around 7 or 8. Right now, it's right around 3. It's right around 3. I remember last time we had it at like 1. Pretty powerful. This is just right around the area of 58 hertz, 58 cycles per second. It's the tone that Eastern science recognizes as the center pivot frequency of this chakra, which is essentially, if you've ever seen the photos of like lotuses, flowers, etc., unfolding, that's essentially, it's a toroidal sphere. I don't want to go too deep into physics here, but it's turning in this direction and spinning in on itself exactly like a galaxy. You think that the Milky Way is spinning like this, but it's not. It's actually spinning across several dimensions. This is called the bagel theory of reality. It's twisting sort of in several dimensions and spinning that way. So this here represents that sound that was the most toned sound in ancient Egypt. And it sounded like this. Ra, the eye of Ra, the eye of Horus, stolen by Thoth, not Thoth. It's your tongue on the back of your teeth, Thoth. Okay, the eye of Ra is on some of our money. Ra is to Horus what Christos or Christ is to Jesus. It's that Christ itself. It's the opening, the awakening, the open portal. As a matter of fact, 87 to 92% of the historical Jesus is actually Horus. Born on December 25th, three kings arrive, star in the east, teaching in the temple at the age of 12, 12 disciples, heal the sick, raise the dead, walked on water, water into wine. Of course, earlier, baptized by the cousin, who was then beheaded, pure chance, I'm sure, betrayed by the best friend, who then went and hung himself. That's all Horus, by the way. It's just kind of borrowed for Jesus. The three kings of Orion's belt, which is an exact mirror image of the placement of the top of the pyramids or capstones of each of the three pyramids at Giza. The three kings of Orion's belt are an exact mirror image of the placement of the pyramidion of each of those pyramids. I think it's this. And I can tell you, that's what was happening with your mics and stuff. There's a lot of interdimensional activity in here now. That's what happened over here, and that's why this was kind of gurgling and popping for a while too. This filters a lot more into that. The sun drops into the region of what's called the southern crux. It dies. It stays on that cross on December 21st, stays there for 3 days, dead on the cross. Early on the morning of December 25th, the three kings of Orion's belt line up directly with Sirius, the dog star, the star in the east, and then the sun is reborn on Christmas morning by moving 1 degree off the cross. Happens every year. A lot of people don't realize these things. In the words of Joseph Campbell, we continually mistake mythological archetypes as being references to historical facts. We think these are things that physically happened. But what we're going to do here, I'm going to put a second frequency in here. Really close. I'll turn it down a little. So that's a second frequency right near 58 hertz. And you can hear that wobble. I'll talk about the wobble in just a moment. Let's do a little bit of an experiment, and that sound like this. Bringing in an octave, actually. Or if you can get it higher. Okay, we're going to just make a Ra sound once and see how it feels. R-A, Ra, sun, etc. You ready? Get a good breath in. I'm going to move back from the mic. Let's do that one more time, wide open. Really let it ring out, okay? Do you feel anything at all from making that sound? Ra was the sound most often toned by the ancient Egyptians. If I take my hand here against the capstone, what do you see on my hand? Blue. Ra represented the light of the sun. Ra represented the light of God, the undivided eternal light. Its reflection in Aramaic was called Nu Ra, Nu Ra. And I've talked about it every time I've been here. What does new mean in English? People usually go, new, it means new. I don't know, I can't think of it. I know what it means. It means something what? Fresh, unique. What's different about moonlight versus sunlight? Moonlight's a reflection of sun. So if moonlight is a reflection of the sunlight, and Ra represents also not only the physical sun, but the spiritual eternal light, and Nu Ra is the word Jesus used for human awareness or human light or human consciousness. That means if moonlight is sunlight, then human light is God light. What's a little different about the reflection, though? It's not quite as strong, is it? So you felt that Ra sound. We're going to tone a different sound now, which is the sound Nu Ra. Nu Ra, okay? So you get a good breath, similar Nu Ra, like that, okay? Just one time, see how it feels. Nu. Be aware of how that felt. Now let's go right back into making the sound Ra one time, wide open. Ra. Did you notice any difference between those two? What about Nu Ra versus Ra? Do they feel any different? What's the difference between the two that you may have noticed? Ra's more solid. Anything about Nu Ra? Lighter, softer. Interesting. Kind of like a reflection. It's not quite so full on. We see through a lens darkly. Yeshua, of course, made statements like, a being divided against itself cannot stand. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, they spoke of, actually, there's no such thing as an Egyptian Book of the Dead. The Egyptian Book of the Dead is a conglomeration of art, of papyrus, of different kinds of teachings, cultural stories, etc., prayers, spells that were compiled for thousands of years. And we call it the Egyptian Book of the Dead, but there's no such thing as an actual Egyptian Book of the Dead. That being said, we just, 3 days ago, were gifted with a huge set of papyri representing the Book of the Dead and different Egyptian teachings. Loretta and I were, and I'm going to pass those around so y'all can actually look at them. I let Lloyd look at them first before the service because I knew he would hog them. So you don't have to pass them back to him. He's already seen them. But when talking about the Ra and the Nu Ra, that direct light and its reflection, that's something that Sri Aurobindo called a supra-rational enigma. Okay? There's another aspect of that. Yogananda talked about transferring our sense of identity from the pseudo soul or the ego back to the true inherent nature of our divinity and to become the ever-joyous witness of a stupendous cosmic drama. As if there's that eternal light, that deepest vision, and that almost dream state that we're in on a day-to-day basis. Yeshua had a name for that dream state. In the East, they had names like the Leela, the divine play, Maya, the world of liquid illusion. Yeshua called that liquid world, the ego, essentially, the word was ape in Aramaic. Now, where did that word pop up? Let's say that he was calling the publicans or the Pharisees on something that they were boasting about. And they would say one thing, but weren't actually living it. What would he call them? A what? What's in the Christian teachings? Hypocrite. Hypocrite's the word ape. What does hypocrite mean? Say one thing, do another. People often say, speak out of two sides of your mouth at the same time. I can't quite pull that off. But what ape actually means in Aramaic is it's the word veil. The veil of the temple was rent in twain from top to bottom. That doesn't mean a cute purple curtain. in the doorway of the church ripped in half. Where's the temple, first of all? This is the temple. The veil is that portal, not necessarily even the portal, but it's almost like a filament or a membrane that represents that space between that which is eternal and that which is manifest, that which is unseen or just simply known, and that which is somehow experienced. And there's that filament, that veil between the two. Speak of piercing the veil, all these other things. It means the word person, which comes from the Latin word persona. Who knows what persona means? It means mask. Mask. The persona in Latin culture, including in the church, or the ape in Aramaic, was an actual mask that an actor would wear in a divine play, and they would essentially begin the play with eyes closed or wearing the mask, and would reveal their true nature by the end of the play. In the Book of the Dead, they actually speak of the Ba, which is this, the soul. One could call it the personality. When there was the reading earlier about love your neighbor as yourself, that word and that phrase, you're going to want to watch the video of this because you're going to miss a lot of what I'm saying. It's not complex. What I'm saying is not hard. It's not difficult. But it's resonating against everything you've ever been taught in your life, especially if you were raised in a Christian church. And 2 or 3 things start to resonate, and you're not going to hear anything else I'm saying, which is why you need to go back and listen to it again and again and again. This is not difficult. It's very simple, but your brain is going to fight against it, okay? And that's why it's awesome that these are on YouTube. The resonance of that which arises, that which comes up, that persona in that teaching of love your neighbor and yourself. It sounds like this in Aramaic, Detrakim lekerabak aiknapshak. And we heard that just earlier, those 2 commandments of love the Lord your God. What that actually means is that word cherub is what I'm going to focus on. Cherub is the word for neighbor. What does neighbor mean? What's that? Other. Other is actually a great way to put that. Neighbor means, in Aramaic, what it means is any object of your attention. That includes the person beside you, the person that lives next to you. It includes the air and the water and the plants and the animals and the ecology of the earth. And it also includes that which you see when you look in the mirror. Other is actually a perfect way to put that, the other. But is the other really there? In the words of St. Francis, he said, what you're looking for is what is looking. When you're looking in the mirror, you're not seeing some sort of somehow separate entity, because what you're seeing in the reflection isn't what's real, nor is what it's reflecting. What's real is what's seeing. The Ba in the Book of the Dead was essentially the personality. The word for self, love any object of your attention, love any other as yourself. That word self in Aramaic sounds like this, nafsha. The direct literal translation is breath of life. So love any object of your attention, love any other as the breath of your own life. Do you live your life that deeply? That everybody you see on the street? Probably not. Are you able to even look in the mirror and love that reflection as the breath of your own life? How important would it be if we were out on the beach? I hear you all have a beach here. Out on the beach, and I pushed your head underwater. Imagine that drive you would have to come back out of the water and to get that breath of life. That's how important it is for you to love others that way. Because you know what happens when you're in the presence of people you can't stand? What's the first thing that happens to you? They say something awful. You stop breathing. What's the root of all the Yeshua teachings? And that's all over Christianity, isn't it? Breathe. No. Like John 20:22, he breathed at them or breathed on them and said, receive ye the Holy Ghost. Boo! That's not what it says in Aramaic. It says napak bahun. If it was napak lahun, it would mean he breathed at them. Napak bahun means he breathed with them. That means in, within, or through. Nice, huh? That's a big difference. He breathed them through what they were feeling. He breathed with them. But what is it that they're feeling? How do you know when you're mask, your sort of pseudo soul, as Yogananda called it, and your eternal nature are out of balance, you know because you can feel it. And it doesn't matter what your thoughts tell you. Your thoughts are cute. Your thoughts do not create your life. They never have. None of the ancient teachings said that. That's something that's very recent in the last 75 years. All that your thoughts do is impregnate the illusion that's not there in the first place. As a matter of fact, every thought you've ever had is nothing but a delusion of a mind that's not even there. That's what the ancient teachings said. But a lot of those prosperity people, and I'm not saying there's something wrong with prosperity, but a lot of the stuff is coming out to hook you into things, to be able to throw money out so that they can kind of get you on the hook, when in truth, that's not there anyway. You're looking at something projecting on a screen, but there's no projection and there's no screen. There's only that which sees, that which is witnessing. So the key to all of it in the Egyptian Book of the Dead was to have the Ba and the Ka. The Ka is the energy body. That's what Yeshua called the Haikla, the temple. There's more. What actually happened exactly? Oh, that's so cool. Active day is to have the Ba and the Ka in coherence, essentially. As a matter of fact, Akh was something referred to in the Book of the Dead, which was basically a magical essential oneness, or a magical state of being, a modality of wholeness and oneness, where that pseudo-soul mask that you had was actually in full coherence with the energy body, and that's when you had true transcendence. And that's what eternal, they didn't have even a word for death in ancient Egyptian, they just called it westing. Setting, going toward the west. Kind of nice little thing there. But what I'm speaking about is the difference between walking consciously in the light versus wandering blindly through the shadows. Where's the shadows? You know, when you go into an experience and there's that aspect, and it happens in meditation, is such a great way to experience it. There's a certain aspect as we're moving through the seven terrace meditation where I'm like, and the other part of me is going, that's the pseudo-soul. Eckhart Tolle calls that the pain body. It's not just pain. It's actually a storage system of your thoughts, your emotions, through something, part of it is stored in something called the amygdala, which is two little almond-shaped glands that record your ecstasy, your orgasms, your sadness, your grief, in this little stereo set of glands in your system. Amygdala is the root of the word Magdalita in Aramaic, which is the word Magdalene. Amygdala is an almond or a fish. And what's a fish? It's an almond with a tail. It's called the ichthys. People have that little ichthys on their bumper sticker, the Jesus people, and they think it has something to do with Jesus and two fish. The two fish, number one, were not in the sky. They're not talking about an astrological thing. They're not talking about him feeding with two fish. They're talking about the Magdalene. And the Magdalene activates with the third eye, which is right in the geographic center of the brain's the pineal gland, which when you look at it physically, it looks like lots of little almonds that are sticking straight out. It looks like a pine cone. Interesting. And we have the hippocampus. All of this brain chemistry is happening. And there's a relationship. That is what's happening in your brain is what is changing the relationship between your mask, your humanness, and your eternal nature. And you know when it's in unison, or you know when it's in coherence, because you can feel it. So I talked about that one chakra, the heart chakra, the exhilaration of death. What does that mean exactly? You hear that wobble? So you really want to feel the wobble? Is everybody breathing? First thing you do when frequencies overwhelm is you stop breathing. That's two frequencies pretty close together. They're about a second away from each other. It's slightly above an F, and the second tone is just a little bit above that. Who would want to live like this every day? You kind of are. This is the way the world is right now. The world's out of calibration with its eternal nature. And that's how we get, it's not about something out there. It's not about an orange-headed monster in a big white house. It's about what's inside of you. Feel that? So what is coherence? How do you know when it comes back into coherence? It's like this. You feel the difference? The exhilaration of death that Mary Magdalene spoke of was that chakra closed off from itself. It's not expressing freely. Think about it when you're facing death. Somebody pulls out in front of you on the road, you're on the sidewalk, and then there was a quote today about this being a magnet. What was that? Was that Yogananda? That guy. I'm going to come back to that. So I've got a little chime here. Let me make it really simple for you. This little chime, it's technically a unison chime, meaning it's the same note on two different bars. But it's not exactly the same. If I hit it together, but how about if I go, you hear that wobble? That's incoherence. They're really close, but they're not quite in unison. This one over here is a little bit higher than that one. What's the easiest way to bring them into coherence? What's the easiest way to bring them into absolute unison, if that's even possible? The easiest way is to take the one that's heavier, that's vibrating lower, and to remove mass. Take a little piece of sandpaper and shave the end. And the more you let go of in the energy body, the more you let go of in the mask, the more the vibration's going to come up. And it's going to come more into coherence with your eternal nature. You know when you're out because it's kind of been like that, especially for the feminine in the last couple years. The feminine's been talking, and the guys don't like it. Feminine's been talking. Stuff that's been stuffed down for thousands of years. Anthropologists have been saying that there was only one time in human history that the center of the human family went from the feminine or the mother to the masculine, and that was about 3,000 years ago. Prior to that, it had never happened. It was all about the feminine. And then, of course, we wobbled very masculine, and now I don't really feel we're wobbling all the way back feminine again, so much as we're coming back into a coherence. We're coming back into a little bit of a balance. Imagine that. You got a car that's out of alignment. What's going to happen? Eventually, it's going to fall apart. That's called entropy. What do you do when there's entropy? Entropy is essentially, there's another example of this is these, tingshas. You hear the wobble? That's two notes that are so close together. But what you're feeling is the difference between the two. What Yeshua was speaking of, what the Book of the Dead was speaking of, was about bringing the pseudo soul and the eternal nature back into coherence. How do you do that? Anybody ever watch somebody take like a Swiss watch or any kind of like a timing type device and calibrate it? The first thing they have to do is loosen it, actually. They've got to pop it loose and allow it to come back into a coherence before it gets winched down again. How do you bring yourself back into coherence? How do you allow it to loosen up so that you can come back into calibration? I'll tell you right now, the way it went out of calibration was by you having an experience, feeling a sense of overwhelm, and not breathing. And that winches it down and locks it in that kind of state that you feel. You feel great, you feel sad. You feel great, you feel sad. Or you just feel off. Someone comes and says, "How you feeling today?" "I'm great." But in reality, your brain's going, "I don't feel great at all. I just don't feel good." This was all in the ancient teachings. It was taken away from us. I'll say this too, that the intensity of your suffering in your life is in 100% direct proportion to your resistance. If you feel like you're sort of to quote Ozzy Osbourne, John Michael Osborne, That if you feel like you're going off the rails on the crazy train right now, it's because you're trying to hold on. What's the most important thing when that roller coaster, like we've been going through with humanity the last few years, and it comes down that big hill and it hits that sharp curve? What's most important to think, did I pay the electric bill? Was the phone bill $133.22 or $122.33? That's not happening, is it? What about the birth of a child? Are you having thousands of thoughts? No. When you have those deep, ecstatic, transcendent states of being, what's most important and what is happening is that you're in a place where your brain can't even comprehend it. Can't even comprehend it. You know what one of the most effective things being done with, there was this huge scientific study that came out about 2 months ago about how a 40 hertz frequency like this, drop that one off. Exposure to a 40 hertz frequency has and 40 hertz, 40 cycle per second light pulses has completely eradicated Alzheimer's from the neuronal system of rats and mice in laboratories. They feel that what actually happens is aluminum and different other kinds of materials, which is the number one ingredient, one of the number ones in antiperspirant, and of course it's all over the place, but actually gets in and pops off the receptors that allows one to have recall and memory. So what's happening? Our memory is being wiped clean. Exposure to a 40 hertz signal, which is the third chakra right here. What is that? That's the intuition. That's the gut. Not higher intuition, which is here, but this is that base gut instinct that you have, which is related directly to Alzheimer's. Just exposure to that tone right there. Another tonality thing here. This is exactly 55.125 hertz. 55.125 hertz per second. I don't know if I'm exactly in tune, in calibration with the instrument right now, but this is the throat chakra. That's the resonant frequency of the king's chamber inside the Great Pyramid at Giza. What does that mean? That means, if you've ever heard about temples and churches, we just had a great thing about the 7 great cathedrals, about the great cathedrals of Europe. All of these were built with sacred geometry, which actually is built to create specific harmonic frequencies by determining length, width, and mass. By having the relationship of those three, like the 3 tones here, each structure has its own harmonic, essentially its own harmonic signature or imprint, like your body does. This tone here is this, if you multiply it by 3, is 441 hertz, which is the exact print of the king's chamber in the Great Pyramid, that you can tone any other sound and not much happens. If you toned this tone or any octave above or below it, you see blue and you hear thousands of voices coming back at you. And this is all nothing but frequency that I'm talking about. We're literally conscious beings of nested frequencies. And we spent so much time trying to understand something that doesn't exist in the first place. Trying to train our mind to believe that we're God. To train our mind to believe that we can heal. To train our mind to believe that somehow we are that one eternal light. It's like me pointing at one of these dots. If, as an example in Christianity, if Jesus is the only begotten, that would be like me picking one of these dots and saying that's the only begotten one. Does that make any sense? How many lights am I holding? One. You've got this great prismatic refraction because we are literally the angels of the infinite. The word angel, the Greek word angelos, also means angle. That we are literally that eternal light that is reflected like that on my hand earlier and refracted out into all these infinite myriad. Seems like there's billions of people on earth, but how many are there really? We yak about oneness and then we talk about some kind of dark, evil entity that's going to eat us up if we don't protect ourselves with a golden bubble of white light. It's not out there. It was never out there. To be in the light doesn't mean that you fake your way through it, but rather that you, again, transfer your sense of identity for the pseudo-soul and bring it back to that true inherent nature of our divinity, so that we can, as I said in the beginning, walk consciously in the light rather than wander blindly through the shadows. You don't have to figure this out. You already are that. Let this go. If your brain starts wanting to pull you off and think about weird stuff and all that other stuff it does, let it go at it. Just let it run full bore. And what they tell me is that they're giving it to us now on the level of frequency because they've been trying to give us these teachings for thousands of years, but we constantly turned them into words, we constantly mistranslated them, and we turned them into bleep religions. So now they're giving it to us on a level of pure frequency so that we can't muck it up. We just lay there and we allow it to happen. And there's an aspect of that playing out of you and playing into you simultaneously. And then if you're interested in a much deeper experience tomorrow, starting at 9 or 10, however we organize it, we'll be doing private sessions, personal sessions, where you actually lay on a really high-end, very comfortable massage table. The obelisk is actually at your feet, the subwoofer here. There's a 15-inch subwoofer, and the paradigm sits on the table itself, and the whole thing's vibrating. And you can actually feel these frequencies moving through you, and then you have headphones on, which actually have a slightly different frequency pattern in each ear, which basically entrains your mind and allows you to go off on a journey. How about one big, huge breath? The room is really active this morning. And like I did last time I was here, I just wanted to acknowledge y'all for keeping the portals open here, because it's powerful. This is not like a lot of places I go, no offense, and hopefully they're not watching. But I want them to watch, but I'm not being offensive. I'm just saying y'all got something beautiful going here. So with that being said, namaste. And so it is. Thank you for being open.